I thought I knew pain. I thought I understood loneliness, regret, withdrawal. But nothing prepared me for the emptiness that followed the day I decided to quit. The bottle had become more than a habit. It was my crutch, my reward, my escape. I didn't realize how much of myself I had buried under every sip, every hangover, every blackout night. The first day sober felt like standing at the edge of a cliff. My hands shook. My mind raced. Every cell in my body screamed for what it was missing. But I had made a promise. To myself. To someone I loved. To a version of me I hadn't met yet. Over the next 30 days, I faced things I had been running from for years. Memories I had drowned, people I had pushed away, truths I had twisted into lies just to get by. Sleep vanished. Hunger disappeared. The nights became battlegrounds, and the days felt endless. This isn't a story about triumph. Not yet. This is about the war before the victory. The pain before the healing. The truth behind recovery. The first 30 days didn't just test me, they almost broke me. But I'm still here. Let me tell you what happened. Day 1. I woke up soaked in sweat, heart pounding like I'd run a marathon in my sleep. My mouth was dry. My head throbbed. Normally, this would be when I reached for whatever was left in the bottle, or started planning how to get more. But not today. Today was different. I sat at the edge of my bed, staring at the wall, afraid to move. Afraid that the moment I did, the withdrawals would hit full force. My skin felt too tight. My thoughts came in waves, panic, regret, shame, panic again. I kept replaying the night before in my mind. The way she looked at me. Not angry. Just defeated. Like she had given up on trying to save me. Like she had finally accepted that I wasn't going to change. That moment stuck to my ribs like hunger. I had told her I'd stop. I meant it. But I'd said those words before. And every time I failed, I killed a little piece of her belief in me. So this time, I didn't promise. I just shut the door behind her and stood in the silence she left behind. By mid-morning, the tremors started. Fingers twitching. Vision blurry. I tried to eat, but the smell of food turned my stomach. I opened the windows. Closed them. Paced. Lay down. Got up again. Every part of me was screaming just one drink. Just enough to feel normal. Just enough to make it stop. But I didn't give in. Instead, I sat on the floor of my living room and cried. Not because I was strong, but because I was weak, and terrified, and lost without my usual way of coping. That first day wasn't a victory. It was survival. And barely that. And when the sun finally set, I realized something that chilled me to my core. This was only day 1. Day 2 came like a hangover that wouldn't end, but this time, it wasn't the alcohol dragging me down. It was the absence of it. The house was too quiet. My senses, used to being dulled by the fog of drinking, were now painfully alert. I could hear everything, the floor creaking, the clock ticking, my own uneven breathing. My body felt like it was turning against me. Cold sweats. Muscle aches. A restlessness that wouldn't let me sit still for more than 5 minutes. I paced. I sat. I stood again. I talked to myself. Every part of me screamed that I wouldn't make it. I turned on the TV to drown the silence, but nothing made sense. The voices sounded distant, unreal. I picked up my phone, thinking maybe I'd text her. I typed a few words. Deleted them. Typed again. What was I even going to say? That I was falling apart? That sobriety hurt more than being drunk ever did? I didn't send anything. Around 2 p.m., the nausea hit. It felt like my stomach was trying to purge something that wasn't even there anymore. I sat on the bathroom floor for hours, not throwing up, not crying, just waiting for it to pass. But the worst part wasn't physical. It was the loneliness. Not the kind that comes from being alone in a room, but the kind that comes from knowing no one out there really gets what this feels like. Sure, people say stay strong or you've got this, but none of them could hear the screaming inside my head. When night finally came, so did the insomnia. I tossed and turned, sweating, shaking, hearing voices in my mind I had silenced for years. And that's when I realized something terrifying. The alcohol wasn't just an addiction, it was a shield. A way to avoid facing who I really was. Now sober, I had no choice but to look in the mirror. And I didn't like what I saw. By day 3, I started seeing shadows. Not literal ones, but memories, regrets, things I thought I'd drowned in years of booze. They started surfacing, slowly at first, then all at once. My mind had nowhere to hide now. I was sober. Completely exposed. I remembered the fights. The nights I'd said things I couldn't take back. The birthdays I missed. The lies I told with a straight face. I thought drinking had erased those memories. It hadn't. It just pressed pause. Now everything was back in motion. I opened drawers I hadn't touched in years. Old photos. Letters. Receipts from nights I didn't remember. I found a picture of me and her, back when we still smiled like we believed in something. I stared at it for a long time, trying to remember who that version of me was. Withdrawal wasn't just in the body. It was in the soul. It was in the ache of knowing I had wasted years becoming someone I never meant to be. Around midday, I broke down. Again. It was becoming a daily ritual. Cry, breathe, pace, repeat. I kept hearing a voice in my head, mine, but darker, whispering, "You're not strong enough." And honestly, I believed it. But something strange happened that afternoon. I looked at the clock. It was 4:17 p.m. I had made it almost 3 full days without a drink. That thought hit me like a small, quiet miracle. 3 days. It didn't erase the pain. It didn't undo the damage. But it meant I was capable of something. Something real. Still, the ghosts didn't care. They hovered close. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the people I'd hurt. The jobs I'd lost. The promises I broke. I didn't just feel guilty, I felt haunted. I had no idea if I was strong enough to face the next 27 days. But I wasn't turning back. Not now. Day 4 was war. From the moment I opened my eyes, I could feel it building, a storm inside me. The craving wasn't subtle. It didn't sneak in quietly and tug at me. It screamed. It demanded. It roared through my veins like fire. My brain started bargaining. Just one drink. Just enough to take the edge off. No one will know. You've made it this far, what's the harm? That voice was clever. Manipulative. It knew my weak spots. It didn't sound like the enemy. It sounded like relief. I couldn't sit still. I couldn't concentrate. Every minute felt like an hour. I tried drinking water. Coffee. I ate half a banana and threw the rest away. Nothing satisfied the gnawing emptiness that clawed at my chest. Around noon, I walked past the liquor store. I didn't plan to. My legs took me there like muscle memory. I stood across the street and just stared. The fluorescent lights, the familiar signs in the window. I could see the exact bottle I used to buy. I could already taste it. I stood there for maybe 10 minutes. Maybe 20. Long enough for my hands to start shaking. Long enough for me to imagine what it would feel like to open that bottle and silence everything. But I didn't cross the street. I turned around. I walked away. Not because I was strong, but because I was terrified. I knew if I gave in, even once, I'd vanish into that spiral again, and I might not come back this time. Later that night, the cravings got worse. It wasn't just about the alcohol anymore, it was about the escape. I wanted out of my own head. I wanted silence. Peace. Numbness. But instead, I sat on the floor and screamed into a pillow until I couldn't breathe. I punched the couch. I cried. I curled up and waited for the storm to pass. And it did. Eventually. That was day 4. And somehow, I was still here. By day 5, I started to notice how many things in my world were landmines. Triggers. Little reminders of who I used to be. The songs I used to drink to. The chair I always passed out in. Even my own reflection in the bathroom mirror felt like a threat. I never realized how deeply alcohol was woven into the fabric of my life. It wasn't just about the drinks. It was the rituals, the music, the people, the time of day, the smell of certain colognes, the way the sunlight hit at 6 p.m., that golden hour when I used to pour my first glass and tell myself it was just to unwind. But I was wide awake now. There was no numbing, no zoning out, no fast-forwarding through the discomfort. Everything was raw, unfiltered, unedited. Around mid-morning, I heard laughter outside my window. A neighbor having a barbecue, probably cracking beers with friends. That sound used to mean joy. Now it felt like temptation in disguise. My mind immediately played out the fantasy. Walk over, grab a cold one, smile, pretend everything's fine. Instead, I shut the window. Later, I found an old playlist. Songs from my favorite bar. I don't know why I pressed play. Maybe I wanted to prove something to myself. Maybe I missed who I was when I listened to that music. But as soon as the first track hit, my chest tightened. It wasn't nostalgia. It was grief. I grieved the person I used to be, the version of me that could dance, laugh, feel free with a drink in hand. I missed that illusion of freedom. But I also knew how much it cost. I'd paid for it with years of regret, broken trust, and mornings full of shame. That night, I sat in the dark, staring at the ceiling, asking questions that had no answers. Who am I now, without the drink? What do I do when I can't escape myself? Day 5 didn't break me. But it left me hollow. And scared. And still sober. By day 6, sleep had become my enemy. I used to pass out drunk, deep and dreamless. But now that I was sober, I had to earn my rest, and I couldn't. I was exhausted, but my mind refused to shut off. The nights stretched on forever. My body ached. My skin felt electric. Every position in bed was wrong. Every sound in the dark was louder. I'd close my eyes and instantly see flashes, faces I missed, places I hated, versions of myself I wanted to forget. I tried everything. Warm tea. Deep breathing. Guided meditations. Nothing worked. The silence around me was too loud. The noise inside me was worse. I started to resent the night. Because when the world was asleep, I was stuck alone in my head. And that was the scariest place to be. Around 3 a.m., I sat on the edge of my bed, rocking back and forth like a child. My legs wouldn't stop shaking. I kept thinking, why am I doing this to myself? I wasn't even sure anymore. The pain felt bigger than the promise. And then came the thought I didn't want to admit out loud. It would be so easy to give up. I wasn't thinking long term. I wasn't thinking about anyone else. Just the bottle. Just that one instant hit of relief. But I didn't move. I just stayed there. Stuck. Frozen. Suffering. And then, something strange happened. The sun came up. The sky started turning pale blue, and for a brief moment, I felt like I could breathe again. I hadn't slept, hadn't healed, hadn't won. But I'd made it through the night. Barely. Broken. But breathing. And in this fight, that was enough. Day 7. 1 full week sober. I stood in front of the mirror that morning and didn't recognize the face looking back at me. My eyes were sunken, skin pale, lips dry. I looked sick. Hollow. But there was something else there too, something I hadn't seen in years. Honesty. There was no false confidence. No beer-fueled swagger. No gloss of denial. Just me, stripped down to the raw truth. For better or worse, I was finally seeing myself. And it hurt. I stared at the mirror and said my own name out loud. It sounded foreign. Like I was calling for someone I hadn't met yet. Who was I without alcohol? Without the excuses? Without the fog to blur everything? I didn't have the answer. But that day, I started writing. Nothing deep, just thoughts. Fragments. Rage. Regret. Fear. I scribbled in a notebook until the pen dug into the page. And even though the words didn't fix anything, they made me feel less trapped. Like I was pulling poison out of my head and onto paper. The cravings came and went. By now, they felt like waves. Some small, some tidal. I could sense them before they hit. My heart would race, my hands would twitch, and then the voice would come. Why are you still doing this? Because I had to. I didn't know where I was going yet. But I knew where I had been. And I couldn't go back. Not after this week. Not after all I'd survived. That night, I stood in front of the mirror again. Same face. Same hollow eyes. But this time, I whispered something to the reflection. I see you. Not the broken version. Not the addict. Just me. And for the first time, it didn't feel like a lie. By day 8, I began to understand something I had never noticed before. Silence isn't empty. It has a weight. A texture. A sound. And it had become deafening. When I was drinking, the noise of my life was constant. Music, laughter, arguments, TV blaring in the background, bottles clinking, my own slurred voice rambling nonsense. That noise distracted me from everything I didn't want to feel. But now, without it, I was face to face with the silence, and it was louder than anything I'd ever heard. It followed me from room to room. It filled the spaces between my thoughts. And within that silence, I started to hear things I'd buried. Regrets. Old conversations. My father's voice. The sound of my ex laughing in another room, back when I still made her smile. I didn't realize how much I depended on the chaos to drown all that out. Around midday, I tried to clean the kitchen. Not out of motivation, out of desperation. I thought if I moved fast enough, I could outrun the stillness. But the dishes were reminders. That cup? The one I spilled whiskey into every night. That pan? Burned during a blackout. Even cleaning had become emotional. I sat on the floor, back against the cabinet, and let the quiet swallow me. I didn't cry this time. I didn't scream. I just listened. To the nothing. To everything. I realized I was learning to sit with myself. No distractions. No escape. Just me, breathing through the discomfort. That night, I didn't turn on the TV. I lit a candle and watched it flicker in the dark. I sat for an hour, just breathing. It felt strange. Heavy. But I didn't reach for a drink. I didn't run. Silence, I was learning, wasn't my enemy. It was my teacher. By day 9, it hit me how much life had moved on while I'd been drowning myself one drink at a time. It wasn't just the big things, relationships, jobs, missed opportunities. It was the small things too. The ordinary moments I never noticed because I was always chasing the next escape. I stepped outside that morning, hoping fresh air might calm the shaking in my hands. The sky was bright, painfully bright, like it was mocking the fog I still carried inside me. People walked their dogs. Kids laughed on their way to school. Cars rolled by. Everything looked normal. Functional. Alive. And I felt disconnected. Like I was standing behind glass, watching a world I used to belong to but couldn't touch anymore. I didn't know how to be part of anything without a drink smoothing the edges. Alcohol had been my social glue, my courage, my comfort blanket. Without it, even saying hello to a neighbor felt like a mountain I wasn't strong enough to climb. I walked to the corner store for water and snacks, but when I stepped inside I froze. The alcohol aisle was right there. Bright labels, familiar brands lined up like old friends who once made me promises they never kept. My chest tightened. My mouth watered. I didn't even have to move toward them. My body reacted on its own, like it remembered exactly who I used to be. I stood still until the feeling passed. Or at least, until I could pretend it had. Then I grabbed what I needed and left as fast as I could without running. Back home, the loneliness hit harder than it had in days. Not the withdrawal loneliness, the life loneliness. The realization that while I'd been numbing myself, the world had kept spinning. People had grown. Changed. Lived. and I had stayed stuck in the same cycle, night after night, losing time I couldn't get back. I sat on the couch and whispered, "I don't know how to live sober." It wasn't a confession. It was a truth. A painful one. But somehow, admitting it made me feel a little less paralyzed. Because if I didn't know how to live sober, maybe these days weren't failures. Maybe they were lessons. Hard ones. Heavy ones. But necessary. Day 9 didn't give me hope. But it gave me honesty. And for now, that would have to be enough. Day 10 came with rage. Not sadness. Not cravings. Not even fear. Just pure, unfiltered anger. It started the second I opened my eyes. I was mad at the sunlight, mad at the alarm, mad that I was still alive, still in this house, still carrying the weight of everything I'd done. I didn't know where to put all that emotion, so it poured out of me in sharp words, slammed drawers, broken dishes. I wasn't angry at a person. I was angry at everything. At the world for moving on without me. At myself for falling so far. At the past that refused to let me breathe, and the future that still felt out of reach. For years I used alcohol to keep the anger buried. I pretended I was mellow, easygoing, numb. But the truth was, I had a fire inside me, and the drink kept it smothered just enough that I never had to deal with it. Now there was nothing in the way. I punched a pillow until my arms gave out. I cursed the walls, the ceiling, the silence. I looked in the mirror and said things I can't repeat. Ugly things. Honest things. And underneath all that rage, I found something I didn't expect: grief. I was grieving the person I could have been. The opportunities one had thrown away. The friendships I'd destroyed. The people I loved who had finally walked away because I gave them no other choice. This wasn't the kind of anger that could be solved with a deep breath or a long walk. This was rage rooted in years of denial, abandonment, and shame. But for the first time, I didn't drown it in a bottle. I didn't run from it. I let it burn through me. I let it show me the truth. By the end of the day, I was exhausted. Drained. I hadn't found peace, but I had faced something real. Something I used to fear. And I stayed sober through all of it. That felt like a win. A brutal, bloodied win. But a win just the same. By day 11, I could feel every year of damage written in my bones. My body ached in ways I couldn't explain. My back, my knees, my hands, all sore, tight, like I'd been in a fight the night before. But I hadn't. I had just existed. Sober. And somehow that felt more punishing than any hangover I'd ever had. The truth is, the body keeps score. Every late night, every binge, every time I said, "Just one more," and pushed my limits, my body remembered, even when I didn't. And now, with the alcohol gone, it was finally speaking up. Loudly. My stomach was still unpredictable. One minute I was starving, the next I couldn't stomach anything. My skin was breaking out. My joints were stiff. I had headaches that came out of nowhere and refused to leave. And my sleep, if I even managed any, was filled with frantic dreams that left me breathless by morning. Withdrawal isn't just a few days of discomfort. It's your body dragging you through everything you numbed out, demanding payment for the years you didn't listen. And it's relentless. Around noon, I sat on the floor with my back against the wall and realized how fragile I felt. Not just emotionally, but physically. Like one wrong move would shatter me. I used to think I was tough. I used to brag about how much I could drink, how little sleep I needed, how nothing fazed me. But now I felt like glass. That vulnerability terrified me. I didn't know how to live in a body that wasn't bulletproof. I didn't know how to care for something I'd spent years destroying. So I started small. I took a hot shower and let the water run down my spine until I could breathe again. I drank water like it was medicine. I sat with my hand over my chest and whispered, "I hear you now." And for a moment, it felt like maybe my body forgave me, even if just a little. Day 11 wasn't about healing. It was about listening. And I was finally ready to hear what my body had been trying to say all along. By day 12, the loneliness wasn't just emotional, it was physical. I could feel it in my chest like a weight, in my arms like something missing. I hadn't been touched in days. No hugs. No high fives. No one brushing past me. Just silence. Space. Absence. I never realized how much comfort I got from physical connection. Not even in big ways. Just the small things, shoulders bumping on a crowded train, a hand on my back during a laugh, leaning against someone on the couch. Without those things, my skin felt cold even when the room was warm. And it wasn't just about affection. It was about presence. I was used to being around people when I drank. Bars, parties, loud rooms full of faces, even if I barely remembered them the next day. Now, sober, everything was quiet. And empty. I tried to distract myself by scrolling on my phone. Endless photos of happy people, smiling couples, celebrations. It didn't make me jealous, it made me ache. Because I used to be in those photos. Before the drink became more important than the people. I kept thinking about her again. About the last time she held my hand. I remembered how she used to rest her head on my shoulder, how safe that used to make me feel. And I ruined it. With lies. With broken promises. With one drink too many, every time. I picked up the phone. Scrolled to her name. My thumb hovered over it for what felt like hours. But I didn't call. What would I even say? I miss you, but I'm still a mess. That wasn't fair to her. She had done the hard thing, walked away. So I sat with it. The ache. The loneliness. The craving for connection I didn't know how to ask for anymore. I wrapped a blanket around myself like armor. Not because it fixed anything, but because it was the closest thing I had to being held. Day 12 didn't break me. But it reminded me just how human I am. How much I need others. And how far I still have to go to earn that kind of closeness again. By day 13, something strange started to happen. I felt a little better. Not good. Not whole. But clearer. The fog that had clung to my brain like a second skin was beginning to lift, just slightly. My thoughts weren't spinning as fast. My hands shook less. My stomach wasn't in constant rebellion. And it scared the hell out of me. I wasn't used to clarity. I wasn't used to moments of peace. In fact, I didn't trust them. For years, any time I felt better, it was usually the calm before another collapse. The eye of the storm. The quiet that fooled me into thinking I was okay, right before I picked up the bottle again. So now, even this fragile calm felt like a trap. My mind whispered, "Maybe you're fine now. Maybe you can have just one. You made it nearly 2 weeks. You proved your point." That voice was dangerous. Because it sounded logical. Reasonable. Like it wanted to help. But I knew it didn't. It was the same voice that had led me back into the darkness every single time. And underneath that voice was a deeper fear. What if I actually can live without alcohol? Because if that's true, then I'll have to face the world without armor. I'll have to repair relationships without excuses. I'll have to rebuild myself from the ground up. And that kind of responsibility is terrifying. Better the devil you know, right? But I didn't drink. I didn't give in. I just sat with the fear and let it breathe. I told myself, "You're not fine. You're healing. That's not the same." I took a walk that afternoon. Not because I felt like it, but because my body needed to move. I noticed the leaves had changed. I hadn't realized it was already fall. Time had kept moving, even while I was stuck in my spiral. That night, I stared at the ceiling and wondered who I might become if I keep going. And for the first time, I didn't dread the answer. By day 14, the battle wasn't against cravings, it was against my own mind. The physical symptoms were still there, sure. But they had faded just enough to reveal something worse underneath: overthinking. Spiraling. The voice in my head that never, ever shuts up. It analyzed everything. My past. My choices. Every conversation I'd ruined. Every friend I'd lost. Every time someone looked at me with disappointment, and I pretended not to notice. My brain replayed those moments like a broken film reel, over and over, until I felt sick. There was no filter. No mercy. Just a relentless stream of regret, shame, and what-ifs. I realized how long I had used alcohol to quiet that voice. How deeply I depended on it, not just to escape, but to silence the noise. Without it, my brain became a prison. One I couldn't escape, no matter how far I walked, no matter how long I stared at a wall trying to disconnect. I tried meditating. I made it 2 minutes before I wanted to scream. I tried journaling. The words came out too fast, too raw, and I tore out the page before finishing. I even tried talking to myself in the mirror. Telling myself I was doing okay. That this was normal. That healing was messy. It didn't work. Not at first. But then I remembered something. This wasn't supposed to feel good yet. I wasn't doing this for comfort. I was doing it for freedom. And freedom takes time. Painful, exhausting time. So I made a rule. No decisions after 9 p.m. That's when the voice gets louder. That's when I start believing lies. That's when I think I'm too broken to keep going. Instead, I curled up on the couch, held a pillow tight to my chest, and reminded myself that surviving this day was enough. Not thriving. Not growing. Just surviving. Day 14 was cruel. But I didn't pour a drink. And that meant I won. Day 15 brought a strange kind of exhaustion, the emotional kind that doesn't come from doing too much, but from simply existing. I didn't want to talk. I didn't want to move. I didn't want to be seen. I just wanted to disappear. Not in a dramatic way. Not even in a dangerous way. Just quietly. Like I could step out of my life for a while. Press pause. Be no one. Feel nothing. I sat on the edge of my bed for hours, staring at the wall, completely still. No music. No phone. Just my thoughts, circling like vultures. There's a weight that comes with sobriety that no one tells you about, the awareness. The constant, overwhelming presence of your own mind, your own guilt, your own history. And some days it's too much. Not because I want to drink, but because I don't know how to live without the option of escape. I thought about turning my phone off for good. Deleting everything. Starting over in some random place where no one knew me, where I could rebuild from scratch without the stares, without the apologies, without the shame. But deep down, I knew that wouldn't work. Because no matter where I go, I take me with me. And this fight wasn't about location, it was about staying in the room, even when everything inside me wanted to run. That afternoon, I forced myself to walk outside. Just a block. Just enough to feel the sun on my face. I passed a kid riding a bike and a woman walking her dog. They looked happy. Light. I wasn't jealous, I was curious. Would I ever feel like that again? I don't know. But I kept walking. I kept breathing. I didn't disappear. And when I got home, I made tea, wrapped myself in a blanket, and told myself, you made it through another day. Sometimes that's all the proof I need to keep going. By day 16, the quiet didn't feel like an enemy anymore, just a presence I was still learning to live with. It followed me, yes, but it didn't crush me the way it had in the beginning. It was almost like a roommate I didn't get along with yet, but had no choice but to share space with. I woke up early, not because I slept well, but because my body was finally starting to remember what mornings felt like. Real mornings. Not the kind that came after blackouts, not the kind where sunlight felt like punishment. Just morning. I made coffee. A small thing, but I hadn't made coffee for myself in years. Not real coffee. Not the kind you taste. Usually the drink from the night before was still in my bloodstream, dulling everything. But now the bitterness hit my tongue, sharp and honest. I didn't know if I liked it, but I liked that I could feel it. The day felt slow. Heavy. But not unbearable. I cleaned the living room. Not out of guilt this time, but because something inside me wanted things to look a little less chaotic. I folded blankets. Opened windows. Let fresh air in. And as I stood there, watching the curtains move in the breeze, I realized something. I was beginning to create space for myself. Space that wasn't filled with running, escaping, numbing. Space that wasn't a battlefield. It didn't last long. By afternoon, the familiar voice returned. "You're doing better. One drink won't ruin everything." I closed my eyes and breathed through it. I didn't argue with it. I didn't get angry. I just let it talk, and then let it pass. Like a wave. Like a visitor who overstayed its welcome. I'm learning that cravings don't last forever. But neither does clarity. Everything comes in cycles. Waves. And sobriety isn't about stopping the waves, it's about learning not to drown in them. That night, I lay in bed and listened to the quiet again. It still hurt. It still felt strange. But for the first time, I didn't feel trapped by it. I felt present. And that was new. And terrifying. And good. All at once. By day 17, I started realizing how invisible this fight really is. From the outside, I looked normal. Maybe even fine. No one could see the war happening behind my eyes, the way my brain still tried to seduce me back into self-destruction every few hours. I passed people on the street, answered texts, even smiled once or twice. But inside, I was clawing my way through each moment. And no one knew. That's the thing about recovery, it's loud on the inside, but silent to everyone else. There's no cast on your arm. No bandages. No visible wounds. Just a quiet desperation to hold yourself together long enough to make it through the day. I checked social media again, stupid I know. It felt like the whole world was thriving. Friends I used to drink with were out at brunch. Family members I'd pushed away were laughing in photos I hadn't been invited to. And me? I was alone in my apartment, staring at a half-empty glass of water like it owed me something. But then I reminded myself. They don't see what I'm doing. They don't know how hard it is just to stay. To not give up. To feel everything and still choose not to numb it. I cleaned out an old box of junk under my bed. Found receipts from bars I barely remember being in. A matchbook from that one night I swore would be my last. Notes I'd written to myself, drunken apologies I never sent. I held on to one of them. It said, "Tomorrow I'll do better." That hit hard. Because for once, I wasn't making that promise drunk at 3 a.m. I was reading it sober. Clear. A little stronger. I taped it to my fridge. Not as a reminder of failure, but as proof that even then, even in the chaos, some part of me wanted this life I'm fighting for now. Day 17 didn't give me answers. But it gave me perspective. And sometimes, that's more powerful than relief. By day 18, it felt like the world was slowly trying to let me back in. Not fully. Not with open arms. But with small invitations, quiet reminders that life still existed outside my apartment, outside my mind, outside the wreckage I'd been rebuilding piece by piece. A friend I hadn't heard from in months texted me. "You good?" Just that. 2 words. Simple, almost casual. But it hit me harder than I expected. I stared at the screen for a long time before replying with something safe and neutral. I didn't tell them I was fighting for my life every day. I didn't say I was somewhere between fragile and furious. I just typed. Yeah. Trying to be. It was the closest thing to the truth I could manage. I went for a longer walk that afternoon. The air was cool, and kids were playing outside like they had no idea how heavy the world could get. I envied that kind of innocence, how life could still feel light for someone. But watching them made me feel something I hadn't felt in a long time, the possibility of hope. I passed a small cafe I used to go to, back when I could still pretend I had control. I stopped outside, staring through the window, wondering if I was allowed to step back into places that used to know a different version of me. I didn't go in, not because I was scared, but because I wasn't ready. There's a difference. Back home, I noticed the apartment didn't feel as suffocating as it used to. The silence wasn't heavy. The air didn't feel hostile. I realized I had been cleaning more, opening windows more, letting light in without thinking about it. Healing sometimes looks like tiny behaviors you don't even notice until they stack up. That night, I sat on the couch and whispered to myself, "You're coming back." Not all at once. Not in some dramatic moment of transformation. But in small breaths. Slow steps. Quiet returns. Day 18 didn't bring joy. But it brought a flicker of possibility. And for the first time, I didn't push it away. Day 19 brought with it something heavier than withdrawal, heavier than cravings, even heavier than guilt, forgiveness. Not the kind you ask for. The kind you have to give yourself. I spent most of the morning staring at old messages on my phone. Conversations I had ruined. Apologies I had never sent. Threads with people who had stopped replying long before I ever noticed. Each one was a scar. A reminder. A door I had closed with my own 2 hands and a bottle. I thought about sending out mass apologies. A digital confession tour. But then I stopped myself. Not because I didn't mean it, but because I realized something painful and necessary. Not everyone wants to hear from the person who hurt them, even if that person is finally sober. And even if they did, their forgiveness wouldn't fix what's broken inside me. That part? That's on me. So I tried something I never thought I'd be able to do. I wrote a letter to myself. Not future me. Not past me. Now. This version. The one sitting in sweatpants on a couch that still smelled faintly like stale beer and broken promises. I wrote, "You messed up. You broke things. You hurt people. You hurt yourself. But you're still here. And you're trying. And that matters." It felt awkward. Even stupid. But as I kept writing, something softened in my chest. Not absolution. Not pride. Just space. Space where shame used to sit like a rock. In the afternoon, I made a list. Not of things I regret, but of things I survived. Every rock bottom. Every relapse. Every night I almost didn't wake up from. I wrote them out not to punish myself, but to prove I had history. Proof. Evidence that I could make it one more day. That night, I stood in front of the mirror again. Not to judge. Not to tear myself down. Just to see the person I was becoming. And for the first time, I didn't look away. Day 19 didn't erase anything. But it gave me permission to keep going. Day 20. I sat on the edge of my bed before the sun came up, in the same spot I did on day 1. Same room. Same walls. Same me, at least, on the outside. But something had changed. Something quiet, something deep. Not a miracle. Not some cinematic breakthrough. Just a steady truth humming underneath the noise. I didn't break. There were moments I almost did. Nights I screamed into the dark. Days I thought I'd cave. Hours where the urge to vanish was louder than anything else. But I didn't. I stayed. I suffered. I endured. I felt everything I used to run from, and I'm still here. This journey didn't save me. It stripped me down. Peeled away every excuse, every lie, every layer I'd built to protect myself from my own truth. And underneath all that? There I was. Exhausted. Sober. Real. I thought sobriety would feel like punishment. I thought it would mean missing out, giving up joy, living in grayscale. But what I've learned is that it's not about giving up something, it's about finally getting the chance to meet myself. The real me. Not the version people tolerated when I was drunk. Not the version I pretended to be when I was numb. Just me. The cravings aren't gone. The pain isn't gone. But I've built something now. A foundation. A choice. And every time I don't pick up a drink, I add to it. I still don't know what happens next. I still don't have a plan. But I know this. I've made it 20 days through something that once felt impossible. And if I can make it through that, I can make it through tomorrow.